Joining us today on Newcastle Fans TV, a lightning-quick winger who was signed by Kevin Keegan in a controversial deal that saw Andy Cole move in the opposite direction. A member of the famous entertainer side, and here to discuss his career in the black and white, Keith Gillespie. And I'm delighted now to be joined by former Newcastle midfielder Keith Gillespie. Keith, how are we?
Not too bad, thanks, Sam. Struggling on.
Yeah, how are you coping with the lockdown and everything that's going on in the world at the moment?
Yeah, it's tough, but everyone's in the same boat. So it's just one of those. I mean, I just have it in my head. You have to get on with it, abide by the rules, and hopefully it won't be long before it's over.
The top then of your Newcastle United career, you were signed by Kevin Keegan in the deal which involved Andy Cole going the other way to Manchester United. When was the first time you heard of Newcastle's interest, and do you remember how the deal came about?
Yeah, I mean, it did really come out of the blue. We were actually playing at Bramall Lane in a FA Cup game, Man United, Sheffield United. So I'd played the previous league game, this was early January, and I thought I would be playing again against Sheffield United, but the team was announced, the subs were announced, and I wasn't involved. So Alex Ferguson pulled me aside and mentioned that Newcastle were in for me. They were in for an English striker. That's the way he put it, from Newcastle. So you didn't have to be a genius to work out it was Andy Cole. This was at a time when, in terms of the European ruling, when you played European football, you could only have so many foreigners. I think it was 3 foreigners, and being from Northern Ireland, I was classified as a foreigner. So that was Alex Ferguson's thoughts in terms of getting in an English player. So, as I say, I wasn't involved, and he mentioned it to me. And he says, "Look, do you want to have a think about it, and then come to me after the game?" So, what happened then? I watched the game, and there's an awful lot going through your head. I'm pretty much going to the game thinking I'm starting for Man United, and within a quick 2-minute conversation with Alex Ferguson, I'm thinking about leaving the club. The problem for me was Andrei Kanchelskis was at the club still, who was a fantastic winger. So although I was playing at times, I wasn't a regular. So I did see this as an opportunity then to go to Newcastle and get regular first team football. So after the game, I went and spoke to Alex Ferguson, spoke to Steve Bruce at the time, Brian Robson, Brian McClare, some of the senior players who said to me that it would be a great opportunity for me. So I made my mind up, and that was it.
That deal in particular obviously sparked some pretty famous scenes outside St James's Park with Kevin Keegan. Were you aware of what was going on at the time with the kind of uproar of Newcastle selling Andy Cole? And obviously the uproar was more about selling Andy Cole rather than bringing yourself in.
Yeah.
But, do you know about what was going on at the time, and did that kind of make you think, what the hell am I doing?
No, I didn't know too much, because what happened was, when I actually went up to Newcastle, I went and stayed with the chief executive, Freddie Fletcher. I stayed at his house that evening, and there was sort of some unhappy people, let's say, at St James's. But I mean, you've got to admire Kevin Keegan for coming out and speaking to those people, because I honestly don't know of any other manager that would have done that. That's what made him so unique. He loved the relationship that he had with the fans, and the fans loved the relationship they had with him. And I think if you watch back with him on the steps, there's obviously a few people having a go, but once he sort of explains that this is the way that he sees in terms of bringing the club forward, you can see that they actually trust him then. And you only have to look at what he did in the following summer when he replaced Andy Cole with Les Ferdinand.
My agent who gave me a call and said he's coming up to see me. Didn't know what about. When he came to see me, told me Kevin Keegan accepted the offer from Man United. He wants to go and speak to him.
So how difficult a decision was it once you came here, once you knew Manchester United were interested, to move here?
Oh, obviously it was difficult, because I never wanted to leave Newcastle. But the gaffer accepted the bid. I've come to a very big club, I just want to do well for Manchester United now.
How was Kevin different to kind of other managers you'd played under and before and since?
I mean, in terms of that season, I think Kevin Keegan believed we could win the league, and probably we didn't. But maybe 4 or 5 games in, he had us all believing. And he was incredible man management. Was just out of this world. Team talks were quite short. Especially the fact that we were doing so well that season, and it was a case of same again, boys. You come into the changing room, and team talks were like 3 minutes long, and some managers since you have team talks and they can last 30, 40 minutes, and footballers aren't great at keeping concentration for that attention span. So Kevin was very different in that. But in terms of coming into training every day, it was an absolute joy. He made training fun. We worked hard, but we enjoyed ourselves on the training pitch too, and it's good when you can combine both of them. Sometimes with at football clubs, it's very difficult, obviously, to please everybody. At times, there's going to be players left out, but I think everybody coming in enjoyed training and wanted to work hard, but at the same time have a laugh, and we were getting the rewards on the pitch.
It does seem like, from the outside looking in, it seems like quite a fun dressing room in a way, because there was a lot of characters. Was there kind of little cliques within the dressing room, or was it quite a united front? Because obviously you had the likes of yourself, Les, Warren Barton, who I interviewed last week, as it goes, Rob Lee, and then obviously the likes of David Batty and Alan Shearer followed. What were the team nights out like?
There wasn't any cliques. We had a really, really good dressing room, and I mean, it does help when results are going for you. And we're sitting top of the league, and we used to sort of maybe organise a night out every 3 weeks, and that was everybody had to go. You had no excuse; you had to go, and the only people who didn't go was Kevin Keegan, Terry McDermott, and Arthur Cox. So we had like the physios there. Derek Wright, Paul Ferris, Derek Fazzackerley when he was at the club, Chris McMenemy, even John Carver, people like that. So we all went out and we would go to, for some food, and once the food was finished, if you wanted to go on out for a few drinks, yeah, you could. But if you wanted to go home, some players did do that. But generally, we would go on to a few bars, and it was good bonding, about, and everyone got on great. But as I say, we did it at the right times. Maybe we'd be playing on a Saturday, and we would maybe go organise the night out on a Monday. If we're playing on a Monday night game, we would organise out for the previous Thursday. So we always done it at the right time. That was the most important thing, and Kevin obviously knew about it as well, because it's not like you're going to keep it quiet when the whole team's running about the quayside.
Yeah,
it was we had great team spirit. As good as any dressing room was ever that I've ever been in.
Yeah, you lot, I'm pretty sure, would be recognised around Quayside, whatever night. And and nowadays there's not much you can really get away with, because as soon as you walk into a bar, 2 minutes later, your picture's on Twitter. So,
exactly.
Obviously, that 95-96 season didn't pan out the way we all wanted it to. There was obviously Kevin's famous meltdown. When did you first see that, and what was going through your head as it unravelled?
When you do that with footballers, like he said about Leeds, and when you do things like that about a man like Stuart Pearce, I've kept really quiet, but I'll tell you something. He went down in my estimation when he said that. We have not resorted to that, but I'll tell you, you can tell him now, if you're watching it, we're still fighting for this title, and he's got to go to Middlesbrough and get something. And I'll tell you, honestly, I will love it if we beat them. Love it.
The thing about what happened was, I mean, it was the last week of the season. It was a Monday night. We had a game to play on the Thursday at Notts Forest, and then we had a home game on the Sunday against Tottenham. So, there was a couple of games to go. But I think we were sat on the coach and waiting on the bus leaving to go back to Newcastle, and somebody had phoned home, and they'd obviously told him I mentioned what had happened with Kevin in the interview, but the first I seen it was when I got back home, and I watched it, and I watch it, and I just love the passion that he shows towards Newcastle. He felt he was being hard done by, and he wanted to stick up for Newcastle. And again, just like I said about him coming on those steps, there's no manager would have done that either. And probably, I mean, he is standing up against Alex Ferguson, but he just felt that Alex Ferguson was playing some mind games, and Kevin wanted to respond to that.
Kevin had you all believing eventually that you were going to win the league. Was there a moment towards the end of the season where the dressing room kind of just knew that it wasn't going to happen for us? Was it kind of after the Liverpool game, or was it later on towards the season?
No, we still believed. For me, the biggest turning point was probably the Man United game at St James's, where we lost 1-0. But if it wasn't for Peter Schmeichel, we would have won that game.
Yeah.
And you look at I think it was a 4-point lead when we started that game. You win that game, you go 7 points clear, and even if you don't lose it, but they obviously nicked it 1-0, and it's down to 1 point, and then you have the disappointments at Anfield, and then the disappointment at Ewood Park when we were 1-0 up with 10 minutes to go, and we lost that. So we still believed at that stage. You look at sort of, we had to go to Leeds on that Monday night when Kevin had that rant, and we won that game. It was a tough game, and we won that game, and we kept it alive. We still believed that we could go to Forest, and then we could beat Tottenham in the last day of the season. So there was still plenty of belief. I know we were sort of relying on Man United going to Middlesbrough and slipping up, but stranger things had happened. So we still had to believe that we could do it. And you sort of look back, and there is a lot of disappointment, a lot of regret, because we were so far ahead at one stage. But I think in terms of the Newcastle fans, that's a season that they will never ever forget. Because of the style of the football that we played, and to take it down, we still had a chance on the last day of the season of winning the Premier League. And I think at the start of the season, every Newcastle fan would have took that. But just because of the way it panned out with us being in the lead for so long, and then sort of Man United coming back at us, that is the disappointing thing. And every member of that squad has huge regrets, and it is natural to have that. But I think at the same time, we can still be proud of the season that we had.
The box, this is Giggs who's let it run for Cole. He's run along the whole line, Phil Neville's cross, Cantona coming in, and he scored for Manchester United. They've been under the cosh for so much of this match, but 6 minutes into the second half, Manchester United break and score crucially.
Barnes, rush, Barnes. Still John Barnes, Collymore closing in! Liverpool lead in stoppage time! Kevin Keegan hangs his head, he's devastated.
And it's run away. This is Fenton. Oh, there's a bit of fortune there. Fenton once more! And he scored! They looked as though they got away with it, but they hadn't.
The following season as well, the team got even stronger with the arrival of Alan Shearer. But obviously, not long into the season, a few months into the season, obviously Kevin left, and in came Kenny Dalglish. How did he kind of differ from Kevin, and was the dressing room kind of open towards him? Because obviously he was a Premier League winning manager himself when he came. Was the dressing room quite open and well receiving of him?
Yeah, trying to replace somebody like Kevin Keegan is so difficult, because of how much he was idolised on Tyneside. And then when you hear Kenny Dalglish is coming in, you think, wow, that is a huge name. And especially the fact that he'd won league titles at Liverpool, and he won the Premiership at Blackburn, and the type of footballer that he was. I think a lot of people sort of said that defensively we were not good enough at times in the 95-96 season. But I think if you look at the sort of statistics, I think we were third or fourth best defensive record in the league. So it doesn't actually
look 1-0 wins that season.
That bad.
That was a bit of an urban myth that it was just all left
Yeah.
down to Darren Peacock, but there was a lot of 1-0 wins that season.
Well, exactly. The way we played at times, people sort of thought that we were a bit gung ho, but that wasn't the case. We had a lot of forward thinking people, and even our fullbacks were very adventurous with Warren and John Beresford, and then at times with Steve Watson and Robbie Elliott as well. But it was it probably was a bit of an urban myth, but Kenny obviously wanted to shore things up a bit, and I think he came in about the January time, halfway through the season, and it was a huge shock for Kevin to leave, but Kenny came in and got us European football. But I think people were just, disappointed because the style of football that we had under Kevin, new managers come in and have different ideas, and sometimes, it's not going to be the same as what you were used to, and the Newcastle fans had become very used to the style of football we played, and we didn't sort of maintain those sort of heights again. Albeit probably the only time maybe that we did. We beat I think Leicester 4-3 when Alan scored a hat-trick, and then obviously Kenny was manager the night we beat Barcelona. So that was they were probably like Kevin Keegan type wins, but it was Kenny who was manager on both occasions.
As you mentioned that night against Barcelona, forgive me for having a bit of a fanboy moment, but I maintain to all my friends to this day that your performance against Barcelona was one of the greatest ever midfield performances in the league. Because the way you destroyed Sergei that night, my God, I imagine he's still having nightmares about that now. Was that night the highlight of your career?
Oh, without a doubt. I think qualifying for the Champions League at Newcastle was such a big thing, because the previous season, when Man United pipped us, second place in the Premiership didn't get you Champions League football, and then even coming second again, we had to go through a playoff to get into the group stages. And then when the draw's made and you see, the big names, PSV Eindhoven, Dynamo Kiev, and Barcelona, and our first game is Barcelona at St James's Park. First game of the Champions League, Barcelona, you couldn't have picked a bigger game. I think in terms of my performance, I think looking back at with Spanish football, I don't think we had as much Spanish football on TV, as we sort of did in later years. Sometimes you got 3-4 games a weekend, whereas back end it wasn't as much. So I didn't honestly know too much about Sergi. I knew he was a Spanish left back, but I wouldn't really have seen him play that often. But I mean, my strength was obviously my pace, and I never really had much of a trick. It was more a drop the shoulder, and hopefully my pace will be better than who I'm up against, and that's the way it panned out that night. And I know as well. Obviously, you've got to, when you put the balls in the box, you've got to put them in the right places as well. But Tino that night was just like a magnet, so he was. So that wasn't too difficult for me, and his performance that night was sensational as well, playing that lone striker role.
Tino Asprilla against Ruud Hesp.
He scores! It's 1-0!
Asprilla's up there, just played it wide for Keith Gillespie. Can he get past Sergi? He can, he's good, and he crosses it! It's another one! It's Asprilla again! It's 2-0! They celebrate at Newcastle! An unbelievable situation! To play by Gillespie, going down that line.
Sergei chasing after him. The cross coming in, and it's a good one!
It's a hat-trick! A hat-trick for Asprilla! 3-0! Wonderful
Wonderful stuff from Newcastle.
Back to Kenny, obviously he's known for kind of dismantling the entertainers. What was the feeling like when he was selling the likes of David Ginola and Les Ferdinand and replacing them with kind of an ageing John Barnes and Andreas Anderson?
Yeah, as soon as sort of Kenny came in, I just felt as if there wasn't that connection between him and David Ginola. And I think the previous season, for 6-7 months, Ginola was just out of this world. And it was a joy to be on the same pitch as at times. He was absolutely incredible. But I think Kenny wanted to build his own team. I think for me, the biggest disappointment was Les leaving.
Yeah.
Because when you've got Shearer and Ferdinand, you build a team around them. Kenny obviously had different ideas. And to be fair, he took us to an FA Cup final as well. I had a great relationship with Kenny and really enjoyed working under him. But sometimes he's a great manager. There's no doubt about it, because you've seen what he done at Liverpool, you've seen what he done at Blackburn. But it's just sometimes things don't work out. At certain clubs. You're not always going to have success. Unfortunately, Kenny didn't. But I enjoyed the time with him. I enjoyed working under him. But he wanted to bring in his own players. And I think some of the players he brought in were obviously just like a stopgap. You look at sort of John Barnes towards the end of their career, Ian Rush, Stuart Pearce.
Yeah.
They were, they weren't going to go on forever. But I think he wanted maybe a bit more experience in the dressing room as well, and certainly those three guys had as much experience as anyone.
Kenny's not always that fondly remembered, which may be a bit harsh considering second place in the league in an FA Cup final. That's not too bad.
Well, exactly. Yeah, second place took us into Champions League football for the first time. He was manager of Barcelona, and he took us to the FA Cup final in '98. So, yeah, I think we were probably, very lucky that we had Kevin before that as well, where obviously the football, the team that we had became known as the entertainers. And, the Newcastle people love their football, but they also love to be entertained as well. And luckily we were able to do that when Kevin was the manager.
Ruud Gullit came in obviously after Kenny Dalglish. I think Ruud came in just before you left. Did you have much of a relationship with Ruud? Because obviously he's kind of renowned for rubbing quite a few people the wrong way, not least Alan Shearer and Big Dunk. How did you?
Yeah, when he came in, he said I'd missed the FA Cup final through injury. And I came back for pre-season. I was still having a bit of trouble with my ankle, and I was in the last year of my contract, and I wasn't sort of happy with the deal the club were offering me. So the next thing I knew was that Middlesbrough had made an offer, and I was to go and speak to Middlesbrough. Brian Robson was the manager, so I went and spoke to Middlesbrough, agreed a deal, and then I did the medical, and I failed the medical. So I remember getting the phone call that I'd failed the medical, and obviously, Middlesbrough couldn't take that chance, with the medical, because the fee was $3.5 million at the time, and I understood that. So I rang Kenny and explained the situation. I said, "Bad news, I failed the medical," and Kenny says, "That's not bad news for me. You're still in my plans." And that was the first I realised that Kenny had actually no knowledge whatsoever that I was going to speak to Middlesbrough. So that was the sort of board at the time, going behind Kenny's back, so I sort of seen then that there might be no way back, for Kenny when stuff like that starts happening. So after failing the medical, I came back, and the club were sort of messing me about again. They'd taken the 4-year contract off the table that they offered me and replaced that with a 1-year contract, because they sort of said that, I might never play again. So I wasn't too happy with the way things were going on at the time. But I was injured then when Ruud came in. Missed the first, how many games it was, and then managed to force my way into the team. And I think I'd played maybe about 4 games on the trot. I remember playing against Middlesbrough on the Sunday in December, and by the Wednesday I'd gone to Blackburn. Blackburn were struggling down near the bottom, and Brian Kidd had taken over, who I knew from Man United, and I was sort of 6 months left of a contract, so Newcastle decided to cash in then at that time. But I sort of felt there was probably no way back after what they did in terms of taking the 4-year contract off the table and offering me a 1-year contract and putting out the press that my career was in doubt. So that was really disappointing. And I spoke to the physios and all, who told me, look, your injury, you'll recover, and obviously I did do. But I think it was a little bit sneaky tactics at the time by Newcastle, especially when you're in the last year of your contract and you could be leaving the club, and potential people coming in to buy me, may look at that. So I was a little bit disappointed towards the end, the way things sort of worked out with the club.
So obviously Kenny didn't know you'd been given permission to speak to Middlesbrough. So no. I mean, if the chances are that's happened to you, that may have happened to a few other players. Did the dressing room talk of anything that was going on at boardroom level, and any whispers that there wasn't really a connection there between, say, chairman and manager?
No, I mean, to be fair, this sort of happened in the July. We've been back for pre-season towards the end of July. It was actually Newcastle played in a tournament down at the Riverside that season. I think I'm not sure where it was at Fiorentina. It might have been Fiorentina, but Middlesbrough, Newcastle, and a couple of other sides. He just had no knowledge whatsoever that the club were trying to sell me behind their back. I don't know if it happened to any other players, but as I say, that sort of happened towards the end of July. I don't think it was too long then to Kenny actually leaving the club then. And Kenny, the fact that they'd done this to Kenny, I think he even did an interview on Sky at the time, and mentioned, I was mentioned that I was possibly signing for Middlesbrough, and he knew nothing about it. So it made him look a little bit, foolish on live TV. I think when the board are undermining the manager, you sort of think, well, obviously the manager's time's going to be up.
Just finally then, what are you doing these days? Have you gone into coaching at all? Because obviously, vastly experienced career, 86 caps for Northern Ireland and playing for the likes of Man United and Newcastle, and plenty of life experience as well.
Yeah, I mean, the sort of coaching side of things, I sort of started doing the badges about 10 years ago, and then realised, look, this isn't for me. It's not something I really fancy doing. I've now got involved in the agency side of things, football agency, myself and another guy for a company. So we're sort of pushing that on. I do sort of some after dinner stuff as well, and go around the circuit and tell sort of stories about my time in football and my career and that. So that sort of keeps me busy, and I do the odd sort of media thing here and there. So yeah, I'm kept busy, most of the time. I think in terms of the agency side of things, you sort of work towards 2 windows, obviously the summer window and then the January window. So it hasn't had too much effect on us, at the minute. But it's a very, very tough industry, but it's one that I've had agents look after myself, and I know good agents and bad agents, and I know how I like to be treated as a footballer. So hopefully I take that into what I'm doing.
While you're on as well, I am going to plug your book, because it's a really good read. How Not to Be a Football Millionaire is available on our Newcastle Fan TV Amazon page. So especially as we're on lockdown at the moment and there's not a lot to do, order it, get it, read it, because it's a really good read.
Yeah, I've heard it. I've heard it's good, but the honest truth is I have never read it. That is the honest truth. But I think I know pretty much what's in there. But I think you know, when you get a chance to write an autobiography, you get one chance, and you want, you know, to get a warts and all type scenario. And I think the honesty comes across in my book, and I think you get more credibility with that. And the reviews that I've had since the book came out has been absolutely, you know, fantastic. So,
yeah. Player representation and an agency, is that kind of what appeals to you in kind of looking after young pros and kind of not making some of the same mistakes that you had in your past?
Yeah, I think with the agency, with being a sort of involved in the agency thing, and you sort of look at young players, you know, young players can then maybe look at the likes of me, who obviously made some mistakes along the way. And if I can sort of, you know, speak to them and guide them and tell them the do's and the don'ts, you know, that gives me sort of a head start, hopefully, in that type of business. Because for me, you know, agents, there's not a lot of credibility with agents.
No.
You know, you probably say 95 to 99%, maybe there's not a good name, but there is some good people out there. You know, not everybody is in it just to make a quick buck. You know, you get people who, the one thing with young players nowadays, they like to be mollycoddled, and you speak to them regularly, you know, and that's, you build up a relationship with them. Whereas you get sort of agents who, you know, only make a phone call when there's a new contract to be had, or there's a transfer to be had. Whereas you want to have a friendship with these people as well, and you want to ring them up and every few weeks, and you know, you just don't know, they could be going through a bad spell in football. And the fact that I've been there, and you know, obviously going through bad spells, you know, on the pitch, off the pitch, whatever, you know, hopefully I can give them that guidance.
Brilliant to talk to you. I could talk to you all night just about you against Barcelona. I don't want to bore you any longer. As I say, it's been great to have you on the channel, and I hope you'll be good enough to come back on one day soon.
Yep, no problem. Thanks for having me, Sam.